Now going to turn things to Rabbi Haim of Beth Ohr, who has, Rabbi Shana was saying earlier, um, there are miracles of this time, and one of them is just this opportunity to break our geographic barriers. Our Southside Jewish Collabrative has, been San Francisco centered until this year, and this year we've been blessed to also have begun a partnership and a friendship with friends beyond San Francisco, like those at Beth Ohr. So, welcome, Rabbi Haim, and thank you for being here with us this evening.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed the privilege of hearing my colleagues teach us very powerful teachings. The holiday did acquire eventually a very important moment of celebrating our gathering at the mountain we know as Horeb or Sinai. And we have this moment that we celebrate in the reading of the Ten Commandments that I want to review with you. But I want to remind you of the second time that we come to Mount Sinai. And it's actually by way of the visit of one of our favorite prophets, the prophet who is in an extended anger management program, Eliyahu. Eliyahu, who is zealous for God. Eliyahu, who probably is one of the great teachers for all of us who are zealous for justice and sometimes despair. So Eliyahu has his moment not at Sinai, but at another mountain, Mount Carmel, and he is seemingly victorious. There is a contest that takes place. It's described in the first book of Kings, chapter 19. I recommend it to everyone. He has a contest, and he stands alone against 450 priests of Baal. And they go back and forth. And Eliyahu not only wins the day, he taunts the priests of Baal, but he also vanquishes all of them, kills them. But his victory is short-lived because Jezebel, who is the earthly power, is not happy with what he's done, destroying her retainers, her priests, and he has to run for his life. And he's given some food, and he runs to the desert. He runs to Mount Sinai. And we're given to understand that he is sustained for 40 days and 40 nights at Mount Sinai, and he asks for a sign. And he's confronted by God, and God says, what are you doing here? Why are you here at Horeb? And it says, I'm angry. I am so angry. So God says, step out of the cave. He steps out of the cave. And God proceeds to give him a halftime show. First, God passes and he's in the great wind, the Ruach HaGedolah, and it breaks up the mountains, Mefareket Harim, Umshaberet Haslavim, and makes sand out of the big rocks. And then the Spirit of God creates a rash, an earthquake. And God is not in the earthquake or in the wind. And then there's a great fire, and God is not in the fire. And then there is kol damama daka. That word kol damama daka, we hear that referred to several times in our liturgy throughout the year. It is referred to in the high holidays. It is the voice that is sometimes translated very neatly by the ethicists among us as the voice of conscience. That is, that God is not going to provide great pyrotechnics for us. The great supernatural forces are not going to be the way that we are going to find our way toward revelation, but we're going to have to rely on the kol damama daka, the still small voice that calls us, needles at us, gets us up at 4 a.m. in the morning, makes us sometimes work beyond our strength for social justice. But there's another way to understand that notion of kol damama daka. It certainly is a different aspect than the aspect of anger. It certainly is a more peaceful way. It is that small voice that reminds us of something. One of the purposes, it's been alluded to a little bit tonight, is that we return to the past in order to be in the present and be turned around toward the future. We say at Hanukkah that we are lighting Ner Hanukkah. We're lighting the actual Hanukkah light, the light of dedication. The Sephardim have it right, not Ner Shel Hanukkah, it's not removed. At Hanukkah we experience the actual light of the flame of dedication. We're in that moment, it's turning us to what it is to experience that dedication now in our life. Passover. Yes, the liberation was historic, but that's not enough. The liberation has to be immediate. It has to be in my life at this time, in this time of what is binding me and enslaving me, what is causing the narrowness in my life now, not only in my life, but in others as well. And so now the rabbis have brought us back to Sinai in a masterful set of inventions and bridges and imagination to experience revelation. Revelation is in some way the hardest thing for us to experience. Matan Torah. The Torah was given at Sinai, but the Torah is being given today, tonight, at this very moment. Today, tomorrow, at all times. The question is someone receiving it? Matan Torah is not a historical event. It is an event in which my heart and my soul was ready to receive kol damama daka, the revelation that turns me towards the possibility of seeing what I couldn't see before. After all, it's a burning bush that is not consumed. After all, it is a social problem that I was unaware of until I saw it. It was an oppression that I was living with and enjoying. It didn't affect me. After all, it was a relationship in which I was quite at home, but it was difficult for someone else. The revelation is not only the pyrotechnics of what is described in what we'll hear as the preface to the Ten Commandments, but it is in the living out of every one of the Ten Commandments that remind us of just exactly how those Ten Commandments are shaped up in their reading. The first four deal with discovering the divine not somewhere out there, but in here and among us. How do we preserve and cherish the divine? And the ethical between us, the mitzvot shebein adam v'chavero, the ones that are so easy to say and they're so short, they just roll off the tongue, not this, not that, but are in some way the most basic for us to think about as building the foundation of our society. We live most of the time mocking these things. Lo tirtzach. Okay, body counts. Lo tachmod. Well, just a little bit. Somebody else has a nicer this or that. One of the midrashim, and with this I'll conclude, because it is about the receiving of the Torah, because it's being given all the time, is that God held the mountain of Horeb above our head. And we didn't want to receive the Torah of our own free will. And the mountain of Torah is always over our head, like the mountain of history is always over our head. It's both an opportunity to say yes and to receive, or it's an opportunity to be buried and forgotten. I'm looking at my friends from Purim, remembering our Purim spiel. But of course, everything is connected to Purim. And on Purim, what was given with coercion is accepted of our own free will. So at this moment, when we're about to receive the Torah again, the question of the social capitalization of the Jewish people begins at this moment. I grew up in a Yiddish-speaking family where we still heard the word Torah is the best schoira. It didn't necessarily mean that we'd get rich. Torah is the best capital, the best merchandise. It meant that we would have an interiority and a spiritual sense that would sustain us. My mother could say this, and actually she educated us for it. There's something about a Hasidic education that even without texts, it educates. It's Torah without verses, but it's Torah. It's been given at the time of one's youth. Torah is the best schoira. Torah is the best social capitalization that we are receiving tonight. We're transmitting it, not only in our receiving it to ourselves, but to our children and to our children's children. May this evening of revelation open our eyes to the possibility of revelation. Amen. Let us hear the Torah.
Amen, Rabbi Chaim. Thank you. Such an honor and truly a miracle to be together in this way, and just makes me so happy to do these things with you. It's been one of the true blessings of this otherwise upside down time. As we prepare to read from a special scroll, I'd like to bring Karen Goodman, president of Beth Ohr, which is right here in Studio City, about 10 miles from us up here at the other end of the valley. And Karen, if you are there,
I am.
find you.
Well, I'm the first picture on my screen. Why aren't I the first picture on your screen? I know why.
There. Would you tell us a little about this scroll that we'll hear from in just a moment?
This scroll is on permanent loan from the Memorial Scrolls Trust that's in London. It is a surviving scroll. And this organization was formed to take them, keep them, and lend them out to organizations, I'm assuming all over, because we are far from London. It's been in Beth Ohr's care for at least 30 years, 30 to 35, I would say. And it is very, very precious to us. The bit of story that I can tell you, and I before I forget, the Torah Scrolls, the Memorial Scrolls Trust, you can Google that. They have a website and you can learn a little more, and there are stories. We, at this point, don't know about our particular rescued Torah. But we have it, we value it. It's been at safekeeping at the home of Rabbi Shana and Cantor Andy for about the last year. And one of our special pleasures, and I would say this goes under the context of reconstruction, is the fact that we have made a bit of a tradition the last 2 years of unrolling it and putting it back in its place. Unrolling it through the aisle of our sanctuary, held very gratefully and respectfully by a number of us. Many would consider this probably not so kosher. So I tell you this, confess this to you, whatever. But for us, it's really very, very, very special. The Torah is at least 150 years old. We're not sure. It was amongst a number of Torahs from the Czech Republic, from Moravia, from that whole area, that were collected by our friends, the Nazis, for the purpose of the Jewish Museum of the Disappeared People. Fortunately, we have all survived, and it has its return. And we are so very grateful that it can now be used this evening at this special time. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. So good to have you all with us. We always know who are the most expansive among us when we do this at whatever synagogue we do, and we come to this hour. We're always so extra pleased by those who are able to find the koyach to go to the finish line with us. And so this evening, we're going to call some special friends from Ner Tamid to open the Aliyah Blessing. And I'll call them in just a moment. Okay. And then it is a great pleasure to have Rabbi Reuben Zellman and Susan Tauber, who will share the verses in Hebrew as we follow with the Yad, and Deborah Franquist and Claudia Kohner, Deborah from Or Shalom and Claudia Kohner from Beth Ohr, to then read in English. We'll go slowly so that everyone will have a moment to get there. Ya'amdu החברים שלנו מקהילת נר תמיד לעשות את הברכות לעלייה הראשונה. Alice and Paul. I think at exactly that moment, their video went away. Let's see if they can get back in. Let's bring the Torah spotlight, shall we, to the... It's not an event unless a little something with the tech goes funny. Alice and Paul, did they go away? Oy. Okay, let me bring Rabbi Reuben. Okay. Hi, Rabbi Reuben. Just going to give one more moment to see if Alice and Paul get back on. Did they?
Of course, Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach. As we see if we can reconnect them. Ah.
Okay. I'm back.
Oh, hi, Alice. Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry.
That is okay. So great. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. So I think we're all set up. I'll just make a brief shout out to a dear friend who gave me this special yad that we'll use to follow the verses. It is, of course, an Etz Chaim yad. So a little tree of life leading our way. יעמדו חברה שלי אליס מקונגרגיישן נר תמיד לעשות את הברכה לעלייה הראשונה.
ברכו את אדוני ממחבורה.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. If it's appropriate where you are, it is customary to rise for the receiving and hearing of the Ten Commandments.
אמן. וידבר אלוהים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור. אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך, אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניי. לא תעשה לך פסל בכל תמונה אשר בשמיים נמל, ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ, לא תשתחווה להם ולא תעובדם, כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אלקנה, פוקד עוון אבות על בנים, על שילשים ועל רבעים בשונאי, ועושה חסד לאלפים לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותי. לא תישא את שם אדוני אלוהיך לשווא, כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא.
זכור את יום השבת לקדשו, ששת ימים תעבוד, ועשית כל מלאכתך, ויום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך, לא תעשה כל מלאכה, אתה ובנך וביתך, ועבדך ואמתך ובהמתך, וגרך אשר בשעריך, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, את הים ואת כל אשר בם, וינח ביום השביעי, על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו. כבד את אביך ואת אמך, למען יאריכון ימיך על האדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. לא תרצח, לא תנאף, לא תגנוב, לא תענה ברעך את שקר, לא תחמוד בית רעך, לא תחמוד אשת רעך, עבדו ואמתו ושורו וחמורו וכל אשר לרעך.
God spoke all these words, saying, I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, from a house of serfs. You are not to have any other gods before my presence. You are not to make yourself a carved image or any figure that is in the heavens above, that is on the earth beneath, that is in the waters beneath the earth. You are not to bow down to them. You are not to serve them. For I, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, am a jealous God, calling to account the iniquity of the parents upon the children, to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing loyalty to the thousandth of those that love me, of those that keep my commandments. You are not to take up the name of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, for emptiness, for Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh will not clear anyone that takes up the name for emptiness.
So, Claudia? Oh, okay, start my video. Okay. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is Shabbat of the eternal your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days the Eternal made heaven and earth and sea, and all that is in them, and God rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Eternal blessed the day of Shabbat and made it sacred. Honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land that the Eternal your God is assigning to you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or their male or female slave, or their ox or ass, or anything that is your neighbor's.
Bonnie, would you be so good as to do the closing blessing, please?
Yes, thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
And we all say, Amen.